Well, let's speak now to Rick Muir, who's director of the Police Foundation think tank. Very good morning to you, Rick Muir. I mean, Mina Smallman's words there speak for themselves. And at the beginning, she said, this was the final straw. Can I just get you to react to her comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think she summed up the situation very well. You know, it's absolutely vital that in a police organisation there is a culture of not tolerating behaviour of this kind. I'm absolutely sure that the vast majority of police officers will be appalled by the behaviour of these two officers. But what the case gives rise to, and a number of other cases give rise to, is I think a concern that misogynistic comments, disrespectful behaviour, this kind of thing are maybe not being reported enough, they're not being called out, they're maybe being tolerated. And that actually what we need to make sure is that, that police officers are holding each other to the absolute highest standards. And I think that's precisely what she was calling for just there.
One thing that sometimes people may be confused by is often the official reaction to something like this, and there aren't many things like this, is that these are a small number of individuals doing something. But then there is a different picture, which is, as you said yourself a moment ago, sometimes these things are shared. So one individual does something which a lot of other people think is an abomination, and yet it doesn't get called out. It doesn't get passed up the line. So there is absolutely an air of kind of, there's an agreement within which says that things can happen, don't make a fuss. That seems really, really monstrous.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you put your finger on it, really. The fact is that it would only be a very small number of people who behave in this extreme and appalling fashion. But the question is there a wider culture around it that allows that kind of behaviour to be tolerated and to continue? And so what we really need to make sure is that we challenge that culture, and that at all levels within policing, it's made absolutely clear what the expectation is in terms of people's behaviour, and that people are encouraged to call things out, they're encouraged to report things, and that is communicated very clearly at all levels of leadership.
Well, anyone listening to what you're saying may well agree with you, absolutely, but why has that not happened as yet?
I think probably it hasn't been taken seriously enough, particularly sexism and misogyny. I think that in the past, policing has moved on. I think it has improved. The kind of over racism and sexism that you would have seen in police stations in the 1970s and 80s, for example, I think that is in the past. But what we've seen from a number of cases recently is subcultures being allowed to develop, where some of these appalling uses of language and behaviour are being allowed to be tolerated. And I think it's a question of leadership. I think what you need is, it needs to be made absolutely clear at all levels, from frontline supervisors right up to chief officer level, that these kind of things, we won't turn a blind eye to these things. We won't just not report them. If they're seen, they will be called out.
If I may,
and that's
the kind of
on
that theme, you talk about leadership. Is it tenable for the people who were leading an organisation, and it could be any organisation, but we're talking about the police force, is it tenable for those people who are in charge of that organisation during a time when, by your own admission, there has been a culture that has allowed things? Why should those same leaders stay in place?
Well, I'm not going to comment on the individual leaders. I think what has become apparent in the recent period is that the police have not responded effectively enough to these issues. And in particular, there's been a sort of institutional defensiveness, I think, in the reaction. And I think policing, and it's not just true of the Met, I think you've seen it in other police organisations as well, this reluctance to apologise quickly, this not coming out and communicating effectively with victims' families, not always being open and transparent. If you look at the inquiry into the way the police handled the Daniel Morgan murder, it was one of the big themes was very much around this institutional defensiveness. And I think all police leaders need to ask, why is that the instinctive reaction when something goes wrong, to try to pull back and to try to defend the organisation, when actually you need to get out there on the front foot, be open, be honest, and to apologise quickly when it's very clear that something horrible's gone wrong.
Rick Muir, thank you for your time this morning. Rick Muir is Director of the Police Foundation.